Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of the Jegna and The Thinker, episode 8. We are discussing Black fatherhood. I am riding with my co-pilot, Mr. Aaron, The Thinker. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. Hey, look, we need to have a party. We did 8 episodes and we didn't kill each other, so that's all good.
Right. Black men can coexist.
There you go, bro. There you go. Absolutely.
Especially on the internet, because, man, it goes left very quickly for us.
Real quick, man. Yeah. I'm good, though, man. How you feeling, man?
Man, good, man. You know, found out that I was having another girl, so I'm going to be girl dad for life. I was trying to have a boy, but nah, the universe said no. I'll be having another girl this coming November. But other than that, man, I'm doing all right, man. Just, major life changes happening all at the same time. The new position and all that good stuff. So life is going well. I can't complain, man. It could be a lot worse. But there's a lot been happening. We talk about Black men, talk about our position, what the media says about us, how we show up. Mm-hmm. We got George Floyd's getting statues. We had Juneteenth. We had Nick Cannon unleashing the cannon all over the world. Man, this man's having babies everywhere. So there's a lot to talk about. And we had Father's Day. We had Father's Day last week as well. Yeah. And it's funny how Father's Day always has this very interesting talking point when it comes to Black families and the whole single mother piece, and single mothers being anointed another celebratory day as like this kind of pseudo Father's Day piece. That always happens every year.
It does, but
it's a very interesting dynamic. But I think that is one of the things that we have to be able to kind of counter and still celebrate Black fathers, because Black fathers do show up. Even though we have a bad rap, we do show up. So that's kind of what we wanted to share with the audience today. But yeah, so that's how I'm doing, man. How was your Father's Day last week?
Let me see. My son cooked for me. He made me some pork chops. He made some fried pork chops. Had some yams and some greens. But man, I think Father's Day for me is to see my kids out there just being constructive as they can. Knock on wood. That's a win. And it was interesting. I was just thinking about Father's Day and just even the name of this broadcast, like Black Fathers. Yeah. I don't know about you, Brandon. I don't see other podcasts. Do you see Arab fathers? Do you see white fathers? Do you see Chinese fathers? So it's interesting that culturally, not a good thing or a bad thing, but culturally, we even got to put a stamp on what we're attempting to do because of, just the way that the world has described us and continues to describe us in every day, and just kind of push back against that dynamic. But, overall doing well. My dad is rocking and rolling, and I appreciate that's my number one father right there. So I appreciate my dad a lot, man.
Gotcha. You're right, man. We don't have, Arab fathers, YouTubes and podcast episodes. We don't even have white father. We hear white zaddy a lot, but we don't talk about actual fatherhood.
and even saying that, and it's not disparaging. I think that, and one of the things I was upstairs thinking about what we're going to talk about, but they have things culturally like codes of conduct that I think sometimes Black fathers that we're trying to develop a little bit. But there are certain things, and I know you've heard this. I've heard certain Arab families or Islamic or just different cultures, fathers, the expectations, even Caribbean families, which is interesting. I got a buddy of mine that's Caribbean, and he said, look, if you got a Caribbean father, this is the expectation, hard on education, so even saying that, it's just very interesting, the dynamic. But man, I don't know if you want to do it, but you want to talk about Nick Cannon? If you want me to start, or you want to do it? So
go ahead and dive in. I'll follow your lead, man. Nick Cannon. The story came out before Father's Day, but his response. I don't know if you got a chance to hear his response.
I did not hear his response.
All right, so you start, and then I'll talk about his response too.
So when I saw just the story that he had, I think, 4 children in the last 6-7 months by 3 different women. I think that was enough, by 3 different women. I wasn't necessarily alarmed. I also wasn't very surprised just based upon some of his talking points. But I think I started to hear the conversation go into, and this is what I want to talk about tonight. He's got resources, so it's okay. And that bothered me because we have too many results in where we live and in communities to where people have money and they don't have resources, to where not having a constructive father figure as a constant in a home develops extremely non-constructive behaviors, whether we see that in young children or where we see that when, as you know, I mean, you're in therapy, you see this in grown adults that are 60, 50 years old, and men and women saying, hey, I have father issues because my dad was around, or, you know, in a lot of times in our communities, I was just having this conversation yesterday. Someone was like, can you imagine, like, and I think you might have said this, can you imagine your dad lives like down the block and y'all pass each other walking at the bus stop, and you're like, that's my dad, but he doesn't acknowledge me. So the first thought I'm thinking is that, can you imagine a kid sitting at home playing on his iPad or whatever, and he looks on the TV, he sees Wild 'N Out, and he's like, that's my dad. But I don't see my dad. My dad cuts a check. My dad, you know, says hi to me. He does the best, but he's not constantly here. And let's be real, Brandon, children, lack of parenting on men and women affects children. We have to stop saying that, because I had a friend recently that said daughter was at a sleepover, and daughter was at the sleepover, and the mom was giving a hug and a kiss, and then the dad came in and gave a hug and a kiss or whatever, but the daughter, you can immediately see the body language be reduced because her dad is not around in that capacity. So we're lying to ourselves by saying that just because somebody has the ability to have constructive resources to take care of a family is also adding to you being a constructive father. I can't hear you. Muted.
I said absolutely. That's a great point. Mm-hmm. Because that's where Nick Cannon kind of took his response to the criticism that he received was, I'm a man of means, and pretty much, he was like, he's soiling his royal oats, right, and all his kids will be taken care of because he's gonna eventually die. I guess he's planning on dying sooner rather than later due to him having lupus. So right. Which doesn't mean he'll die, but I, you know, part of me kind of gets what he's saying, but part of me is not co-signing it at all. It's like, yeah, you already have children though. So why do you need to impregnate several models to have all these babies at one time? Like, like that don't make no sense. Like, he's trying to live into some like royal fantasy from some time period that we're not even connected to anymore, unless you're watching Game of Thrones. Like, I don't understand what's going on when it comes to Nick Cannon. But you know, Nick Cannon, celebrity life, we talked about it here on the podcast a few times. Some of that behavior is just not, it's outlier behavior. It's not inside the norm, and it's bizarre. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be having these relationships with these models, but the fact that he's bringing in children in the world, we know that when children, whether you have resources or not, when they don't have intact families, man, that's dangerous. And for him to be a black man who poses to do something constructive and says that he's doing constructive things and tries to be quote unquote woke and down, it's a bad look. If you ask me, it's a bad look, man. And I think he's trying to use a righteous excuse to cover up for his faulty behavior.
Yeah, well, so here, Brandon, here's the other thing I thought of. Do you remember that infamous Oprah Winfrey episode when they had that brother on there that had 37 children by like 17 different women?
Well, I think he was from Memphis, but yes.
Yeah. So when you think about that, like, this is the regular guy, regardless of what people think about Oprah Winfrey and her stances. She gave you a real life example of brokenness. And there was clear brokenness on the fact of the guy, and also on the fact of the children. The kids was mad. The women were upset, like, what am I doing? And things of that nature. Nick Cannon is not real life.
Right.
He's not real life. And that's the one thing we have to remember. He has means. He does whatever he did. He earned it for himself. Bravo to him. But his lifestyle is not what the majority of people that are trying to live constructive lives, what your life is going to look like. And so remove Nick Cannon. If that was Nick Cannon that works at 7-Eleven making $15 an hour and he had the same behavior, you wouldn't be saying that, because we have to be able to separate the behavior is bad from the resources, because the behavior is bad. And it's not something, is this something that you would like to promote to your sons? And as fathers, is this a guy that you would want your daughter to marry? Is that an example? If you have a son, that's just a question. Now, if you're thinking in a very simplistic form to where, well, he's got money and my kids will be taken care of from generations. Well, as you and I both know, that level of selfishness, in my opinion, also is going to reveal some character flaws that we may not see right now, but we're going to see them a little bit later on. Who knows how the money's being managed? Who knows who was left to? Some of them girls might be mad. He left it all to the one IG model that's the cutest. You know what I'm saying? Like let's be real. Like, let's be honest, like what we're talking about. And so, and even the selection, nothing against the women, but even the selection in the ladies that he's with, it's a very interesting choice. And I just think I want people to remember he's a celebrity. This is not real. He should not be the example of fatherhood that you're thinking about.
Yeah. And another one of my fears is that people will take this example and start implementing in their own lives. Well, Nick Cannon can do it, so I can do it too. And I'll be honest with you, Black folks, man, we're very impressionable. We will take some foolishness like this and champion it with our own foolish behavior and say, well, hell, if Nick Cannon can do it, why can't I do it? And it's like, neither one of you should be doing it, regardless if it's Nick Cannon or not. Like, you should not be doing that. Like, to me, I think, you know, we talk about three people on this podcast almost every week: Dr. French Chris Welson, Mr. Fuller, and Kevin Samuels.
Yeah, Kevin stuck in there. Yeah.
And I think all of them pop up here, right? Because what does Dr. Welson always say? She says, when you play with sex, the joke is on the offspring.
Bingo.
And I think that shows up here, because at the end of the day, those children have to live with that reputation of being one of the 4 Nick Cannon children that was born within the same year. They're gonna share birthdays or birth years with those additional siblings. Like that puts them in a particular space of just awkwardness. That's not the norm. Plus, Nick Cannon doesn't have the time to be a father to all those kids, so that's going to affect them as well, let alone if they end up having step parents and all that stuff later. Who knows? But still, that's your dad. And one of the things that I want us to talk about today is like how the role of the Black father has been reduced to not mean anything but providing resources, because that lap time, that consistency, that presence is important. I mean, even for myself, I'll be honest with you. My oldest daughter started doing track a couple of weeks ago, the beginning of June. I haven't been to one practice. I've been busy. I haven't been to one. My wife's been carrying everything. But as my wife's pregnancy continues to go on, I'm taking over practice duties in July until she's done for the summer. Now, the first time I showed up to anything was during her first track meet. And my daughter, I'll be honest with you, she hates track and she's not very good. She's slow, but she's out there. And I had to have a conversation with her. I was like, I know you hate this, and I know you feel like we're making you do this. But I want you to stick with it because I want you to learn from this. I don't care if you lose every one, your dad's going to be here for you. And it meant something to her. And she went out there and still did it. And God forbid, I don't want to see my baby lose every time, but damn.
You got to win one, baby girl. Give me one. Come on, girl. Like one.
I don't know.
We might pull some other kids out the race. We're going to get that done.
Like, I got to the point where I was like, just don't be last every time.
Shout out to baby girl, man.
But again, it's about me just being there, having that time. You know, for Father's Day, one of the things that I did was I took both of my daughters out for their own morning with me. So my youngest got me on Saturday. We went out to breakfast. We went out to buy something from the store, whatever she wanted. We just spent like 2.5 hours together. And then on Sunday, I did the same thing with my oldest daughter. And it was just being intentional, spending time together, giving them an opportunity to ask dad questions or me having conversations. Now, they didn't want to talk about nothing but, you know, stuff on their iPads, but it didn't matter. It was like we were just spending time together. And And Nick Cannon's kids ain't gonna have that opportunity because he's got several different businesses and several different kids and several different baby mamas. They're gonna miss that, and that's tough. And I think that unfortunately, Black children are so subjected to missing that connection to their kids or to their fathers. Sometimes both of their parents, but definitely their fathers. That has become a normal behavior to have the Black man absent, and that's where Mr. Fuller comes in. Is like, these behaviors are normal. So how do we have a counter behavior to make it more normal for us to move forward and function differently? And then I think where Kevin Samuels comes into this conversation is this idea that Nick Cannon's a high value man, so these behaviors are okay. So I wanted to just kind of throw those perspectives out there because I think that element is here within this story as well.
Yeah, I think Mr. Fuller, that just goes back to Black men and women when we start these relationships, the 200 questions that nobody wants to ask. And I think when we think about that, if people don't know what we're talking about, is that Neely Fuller Jr. In his United Independent Code System concept book, he says that before people jump into bed or you start dating, you should ask 200 questions. Well, let's be real as humans. If you start getting answers to those 200 questions, you're probably going to get up and be like, give me the check, because I'm not going to want to participate. I'm not going to want to stay on this date. But that's the point, is that you're getting all the information out early. And yeah, with Kevin, I mean, the whole high value man concept, it sounds good on paper, but let's be honest, Brandon, we talked about this. Most Black fathers are not going to be this quote unquote high value men. So those are concepts that we need to be throwing out the window because they don't apply to everybody. We need to try to be the best constructive, healthy fathers, promoting the best possible relationships we can with our partners, with our children, with the people in our community, and everything that we do. And I don't see these conversations happening. And I agree with you. We're so entertainment based that people are really just like taking this in. Oh, he's got money. I'm like, well, Mike down the street just did the same thing, and his kids are not in that same circumstance. So why are we promoting this? And I think that getting back to, I don't want to say moral high ground, but getting back to having a code of conduct just individually in our own families about what's acceptable for fatherhood and what's not, that is something that's definitely missing and that we need to talk about a little bit more frequently.
Absolutely. Who do you think is responsible for that conversation? Does that fall on Black fathers or Black men? Is that just something that we need to have community organizations facilitate a conversation, or is this like does this fall on the elders? Like, who brings this conversation to the forefront from your perspective?
The men that are able to communicate it effectively. I mean, sometimes in the communities or just places where we grew up, I respect the OGs. And sometimes the OGs would say a whole lot of dumb stuff, but there'd be one or two things that he'd throw in there. He'd be like, man, he is right about that. And so I just think every man that has a voice where you might have sons, you might have daughters, you might not have your own biological children, but you might be a teacher, you might be a coach, you might work at you might be in some sort of mentorship position, even at a job. Brandon, you know this, to where we've had men that you could talk to even in a professional workspace that have had more experiences and things of that nature. I've had Black men tell me in professional workspaces long time ago, hey man, you're in control of whether or not you want to be a father. You are. You drive the car, not her. And you need to be thinking with your head and not the other head down there. Those are conversations that men need to be having. And let's be honest, my generation, when we were growing up, we got raised by television and rap. And if we're not careful, this generation is getting raised by TikTok and IG. Right. And we have to make sure that we're becoming available. So I just think that each person individually, and that goes back to, I know it sounds real old school, but it goes back to the entire community concept, to where you actually have to care about the kid that ain't yours. Right. You actually have to care about, okay, I see little Susie's daughter over here or whatever, or son is tripping. Let me just give him a little gym and pull him to the side and just let him know that I care about him and try to be some sort of father figure in a community. So I think it falls specifically on Black men. It could fall on everybody, but I think that we have the ability and capability, if we take it seriously enough, to be the ones to promote the mission. Because I'll be honest with you, I think it all starts and ends with us. Mm-hmm. I just think everything starts and ends with us.
Yeah. I want to touch on I want to touch on what you said about being responsible to children that ain't yours, and the generational differences. Because, like you say, your generation, you're a little older than me. You said your generation grew up on rap, and you said what else? Rap and what?
Rapping, and I don't even remember, dude, but it was rapping. Yeah, but I think primarily like rap music and videos and television. You're rapping TV,
rapping TV. Yeah. And I would say my generation grew up on rap, television, and ourselves. Because a lot of times we were just out here in the community. Like we were just out here with no facilitation, no guidance, or nothing. And now the generation where we're at today, absolutely, social media is probably the number one influencer for these young people. And I think that these three generations of Black men are all, driven by something that's outside of our control. Like we don't control our own narratives in rap music. I mean, to a certain extent, you would think we do because we're the ones writing the music and recording it. Right. But really, those folks are influenced by fantasy at the end of the day, for the most part. And then when you're influenced by the streets, it's all street culture, which is a spillover from what? Prison culture. Right. And then nowadays, social media, there's so many different algorithms. You can be sent down any type of thought rabbit hole very easily and even realize it. So I think, through these generations, who kind of holds that accountability for the conversation gets a little tricky. And I think that you're right. Those folks who do have the voice do need to find mediums to spread their voice and not attack other Black men for their mistakes.
100%.
But just education. And I think, and you see this, you pay attention to Manosphere content, that there's just a lot of attacking going on without really education. It's more drama. I mean, it's to the point where some of the bigger conversations are called the Coliseum. It's just like, why are we going into this as a battle mode and not from a place of growth? And I think that that's one of the things that we're missing. And that goes to my next point, which is, since it's not a place of growth, what have the younger Black men noticed? And I would say this started in my generation. We have young Black men, when an elder dude is trying to give us some game or put us, give us some information or, steer us in the right direction, we'll say things like, "You ain't my dad." Like that is a common line in a lot of your blockbusters, your Black movies, where they'll have the young Black man who's like, "You ain't my dad." There was a meme. There was a meme that went around a couple years ago that was super funny. But this little Black dude, man, this kid had to be no more than like 8 or 9 years old. And this dude was like, "Man, just stop cussing." Or like this older dude was telling him, like, "Stop cussing." And the boy turned around and cussed him out and told him, "You ain't my dad." He's pretty much F him. And I was just like, dang. But that's where we're at, where we can't even have this cross-generational conversation because there's a level of, I don't respect you, you don't respect me, that becomes problematic.
Yeah. Also, and this is something that, again, we talk about Kevin. Man, Kevin might just need to come on the show. Kevin, you coming on the show, bro. But Brandon, men, I'm speaking specific young Black men, and I know men respect things that are built. It's just natural human tendency, and women to an extent. And we have to be honest about, we're making efforts, we're making strides, but what have we built? And sometimes you're not getting that level of respect because you haven't built anything. We've talked about this before. You build churches. Aside from that, but not enough businesses, infrastructure, strong foundations. And not to say that we don't have the capacity, but we talk about this all the time. You have to assess exactly where you are. And this is something I had to learn. We can change things in a generation. Sometimes as Black men, we beat ourselves up for being behind, but we don't give ourselves credit for all of a sudden when we're ahead of the game. Because it happens just like that when we become serious. But I don't think that we realize that, man, sometimes our young people, and listen, I have a son. He respects, "Oh, you want to talk to me about investing? That's how much money you got? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I got this. All right. You want me to learn how to cut grass or do this? All right. You show me. Oh, I get a paycheck." They're results, or we are in a results-oriented generation. They're not about lecturing anymore. And that is the problem. And we, even myself, when I was younger, I tended to go towards people that had some more results because I'm like, man, my daddy a preacher. You ain't gonna preach to me. But I need some results, or I need to see that you're building something. And sometimes we're not honest about that. And that's why it goes in one ear and out the other. Because let's be real, these young kids can see things tangible. They see kids getting on YouTube and doing this and doing this and doing this. They see all this stuff out there, and they're looking at their home, at their current homes, the fantasy, and they even might develop a form of resentment towards their own fathers. Because think about the fantasy. I don't want to be my daddy. You know, taking in that's a real thing. That's a real thing. I see this fantasy, but we're also not giving our young men and women enough. What's the word I'm looking for? Enough of a big picture to understand that even if it's not the fantasy, it's okay to have a constructive, healthy Black family. And sometimes even ourselves, we're trying to promote the fantasy when, listen, stability and consistency is far more than just going after a fantasy. And a lot of Black men have to stop going after a fantasy too. Bro, you 47. You want to be a rapper. Look, but you're a better plumber. You're a better plumber. Be a plumber, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't like, and we need more of this. I could go on there for days, but yeah, man, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. And man, I'm so glad you brought up the result-driven piece, because I think we missed that. I think we think because I'm in the nonprofit world, man. I'm in nonprofit. I got one foot in nonprofit, one foot in academia. And whenever Black males come up and what they need due to not having fathers, it's always this. It's never anything in results driven. It's just like they need mentors. And I'm like, mentors to do what? Like, what are they going to do? Take them to McDonald's 2 times a month? That ain't going to change nothing. And then I get in trouble for saying this. I wrote an article, man, like 3 or 4 years ago. And it went kind of viral locally. And it actually cost me a job too. And I said, the title of the article, I'm fine with mentioning it now because I think that I think what I was saying and where we're at today makes a lot of sense. But the title of the article was "Mentoring Doesn't Work for Black Boys," and the reason why what I was saying in the article for folks that will actually read the damn thing, I said that we've had millions of dollars float, and I was just talking locally, flow through the Twin Cities area to mentoring programs. And I said that, but Black boys continue to be in worse shape than they've ever been. And I was talking about since the 80s. And I said, why is that? Why do we keep saying that the response is mentoring? And I pointed at the current mentoring model, which is, you find an adult male who has some kind of stability to parachute in for a few hours a week to impress the young man or take them out to eat or whatever, help them with their homework, and then you move on. And that's not a pseudo fatherhood. These Black boys need apprenticeships. They need to be shown how to get something because their main motive, all the Black males that I've ever dealt with, their motivation isn't to spend time with older Black men. Their motivation is to get them that bag, man. They're trying to get some money. So that's where I start with a lot of them is just like, what are you interested in? How do you make money doing it? And by me having a little bit of information on like how to do internet stuff, I've encouraged a lot of young dudes to start t-shirt companies, start learning how to be barbers, lawn care. Here in Minnesota, it's cold a lot. So, having shoveling businesses, just trying to help them figure out ways to get money because that's where they're at. And I've had a lot more success mentoring young men than a lot of people that I know who also do mentoring because they're trying to impress them with their Cadillac and their big job title and all this other bullshit that these kids don't even care about. They don't respect you because you're not even respecting their thoughts. And that's what I was saying in the article. It's like, you have to be results driven. And unfortunately, these kids who don't have a lot, they've moved on beyond that attachment from a Black man. They're on trying to, how am I going to survive? And you have to meet them at that survival level and to the point where you build enough rapport with them, and then you can launch off into some other stuff. That's why I'm like, when anybody talks to me, I tell them exactly what I do. I give them an idea how much money I make a year. And I say, this is how you can get it too. You don't have to go to school as long as I did. You might want to do something else, but this is what you can get. And it's not a point of like flashing in them face. I'm not trying to show them any of my fancy watches. I'm just trying to get them to understand that whatever you want to do, I can help you as far as you want to go, but you have to make it a reality. So I try to break through that fantasy as much as I can to help them understand that they can attain anything they want to do. If man, any black male, man, if you want to become a lawyer or a doctor, it's almost a guarantee you can do that. But if you want to become a professional athlete, you have a very small probability, but we don't think of it like that because we see so many.
We talk about that.
You can be a guarantee, you can be a guaranteed whatever you want, entrepreneur, whatever. You can make it. You can make it to wherever you want to go. But we live in fantasy. Everybody wants to be a millionaire. Well, you can make $400,000 a year and live pretty damn good. But most people don't think like that, man. They have outlier thoughts and outlier visions for where they want to go, but nobody's ever connecting those dots.
Yeah, I think it's funny because with the you think about even in general across the planet, relationships between men and women, or let's say fathers and children, one common thing I always see is you might have a family business and the sons or daughters are working in that family business.
Yep.
Well, but the key thing to that, Brandon, is that the dad and the mom built the family business.
Correct.
And then so something had to be built in order, and we could even dumb it down, not dumb it down, but we can relate it to one of probably the biggest the black institution in this country, in this part of the world, which is the quote unquote black church. You consistently see a black pastor, and then his family. What do you see? You see pastors and people that serve in the church throughout the family and generations. Dude, I got families. I know that they got, look, the daddy was a pastor, the son was a pastor. It's just set all through the generations. That also needs to coincide in business. So if that coincides in business, black fathers are teaching, and the black mothers that are helping them develop these companies or doing whatever they're doing, hey, I'm passing this down from generation to generation to generation. Because like you said, some of these kids, they're just looking for something constructive so they can learn how to make a living.
Yeah.
And specifically for black men, that is what they are looking for. How do I survive? Because they're in a survival mentality. They are men. We are competitive. Sorry, ladies, we're very, very competitive. If you meet a guy that ain't competitive, you might want to put a side eye to him, because we are very, very, I'm being serious. We are essentially very, very competitive. So when young black boys are out there and they're looking at the world and they have this vision, whether you like it or not, a constructive family, a consistent family, all these things. Okay, how do I get that? Now I need my father, or I need other black men. Okay, how do I need that level of consistency, but how do I get that? And so we've got to be teaching them constructive skills and apprenticeships. And as black fathers, that's one way we can have an impact. Even if you have a job and you're in upper level management, teaching your son, look, this is how you maneuver. You know how that goes, Brandon. This is how you maneuver through corporate America. I've seen generations of lawyers. It happens, but we have to be intentional about that for our young black men and our young black women as well.
Absolutely. Intentionality is important. Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit and just talk about some of the things that we both learned being fathers. I mean, we both have been fathers for almost a decade. I'm getting close to a decade. You got 2 decades in being a father yourself. What would you say your top 2 things that you've learned about yourself being a father?
Don't take it personal. That's number 1. Don't take it personal. At the end of the day, you know, I love to use this example. In New York City, you would whenever I used to get on the train, I went to school in Jamaica, Queens, and I'd be walking towards to get ready to go home, and there would always be like a lady or a guy holding a Bible, standing on top of a milk crate and yelling to the people, "Come, Jesus is coming." And they're just yelling. They're yelling the message. Nobody's stopping and listen, Brandon. Everybody's walking past them. But once in a while, one person will stop, you know, oh, okay, that's all right. I hear you talking. That's what it is as a father. You throw it on the wall, you give it out the gems. They might hit, they might not hit. They may not get it until those kids are 35, 40 years old, but that might be the time to where the universe determines that they get it. And that's what I had to realize, because my father was a great example, but I didn't develop a level of maturity and really understand what he was saying and the lessons he was trying to teach me until my mid-30s, because I just wasn't ready to hear it because of my own different traumatic. So the first thing is don't take it personal. The second thing is you have to be intentional about being a constructive father. You have to be intentional. It's not just going to happen. You have to be intentional about what you want to teach them. You have to be intentional about helping them to develop their own self-image. You have to be intentional about teaching them about money. You have to be intentional about teaching them about constructive, healthy relationships and in the partnership as well. And so sometimes I think we use that crutch. Oh, I ain't got a manual. Mm-hmm. You may not have a manual, but you know what you want their lives to look like. So you need to be intentional. Somebody say, oh, there's no manual to it. Okay, but guess what? If you're intentional, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. But you have to be intentional. And guess what? Don't take it personal if they don't get it immediately. They will, because they will remember. But if you're not intentional about it, and if you start to internalize things, and that's what happened to me, is I would take everything personal. Oh, my son's not listening to me and whatever. And I'm thinking it's a reflection of me. But then my father remembered. My father was like, man, I was a good dad. I ain't had nothing to do with you going and stealing out of whatever that store was. And I'm like, you're kind of right. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you got to be intentional. Don't take it personal. So what about you? What are your 2 things?
Yeah, man, that was really good. You made me think of some other things to add onto my list. I would say one of the things that I've learned is that there is no one way to parent a child. You know, having two girls, I parent both of them very differently because they're just different personalities, man. Right. One I have to be a little bit more firm on. The other one, you know, she kind of just listens right away.
Same here. Yeah, same here.
It's like this. It's like, you know, you got to pace yourself with parenting. You can't just like go full, like you got to kind of read the signs a little bit. And that was a challenge. Like when you go from 1 to 2, you don't really think of that until you kind of get the flow of what's going on. Now that I'm going to 3, I'm like, damn, I wonder what kind of personality this next one's going to have. That's going to be very interesting. But I think that, you know, for me being a Black father, it's about adjusting. You know, when I think of Black fathers, even when I think about like TV shows and things like that, we always get like this one archetype of a dad. Like you get the Uncle Phil or you get the Rock. I don't know if you remember that show, Rock.
Ooh, Rock, man. I don't know if I want Rock to be my daddy, bro. Rock was tough, bro.
Like you get these like very like
no personality, nothing. Yeah.
Even Cosby, like you get these very like boxed in ideas. And that's like, you can't be a boxed in dad. Like you have to be different for your kids because they show up differently. So, I mean, with that comes patience and things like that. But that flexibility, I think, is huge. The other thing that I think that I've learned is that even when you think your children aren't paying attention or listening to you, they are, because they'll show you later. And it's just like, damn, like I've been talking to you about this for years. And finally it just like clicked. And now you get it. Or they'll give you some feedback when you're like, dang, I guess they was actually like paying attention. Or they'll tell you something that you do, and you're like, oh man, I guess I do that. They tell you about yourself.
Right.
Man, so you know, the babies are always watching is probably something that I've learned about being a father. So just being mindful. Just being mindful of what I do. Like, you know, I had a conversation with my girls over dinner a couple weeks ago. I think it might have been for Father's Day. I was just like, what's something that I do all the time that I say or that I do? And they said that they said, so I say this all the time, like, I appreciate you. So when I'm driving around or somebody gives me something, or I'm getting them food through a drive-through, I'm always like, appreciate you. And that's what they brought up. And I was like, dang, I guess I never thought about it. I do say that all the time. And I was like, well, what does that mean to y'all? Like, when you hear daddy say that, what does that mean? And then it was like, you're being respectful. And I was like, boom, that's exactly what I want them to understand, is that no matter who I'm engaging with, I appreciate them doing something for me, and they understand that that's a level of respect. So that I was like, that's a win.
It is.
So I think, you know, fatherhood is an opportunity for men to learn more about who they are themselves. You know, I read the book by Naeem Akbar called Visions of Manhood. It's a very short book.
I got that book upstairs, bro.
You got it? Yeah.
I read it. It's a good one. It's a short read, but a really good constructive.
Very constructive, very short. And I remember in the book, he was talking about like this he didn't call it a circle, but he was talking about how manhood's like this circular object, maybe a spear or something. And he said, you know, being a father is a part of manhood. What he was trying to say is, without becoming a father, you miss a part of manhood. Like, you're not a complete man. And then I think towards the end, he talked about eldership, and that like completes the circle. And that concept always stuck to me, because I was like, man, like, the dudes that I know, like my 2 best friends do not have children. Like they're both married. They don't have any kids. And that's a part that I can't really connect with them on because I have kids, they don't. And I'm like, man, they don't even understand what they're missing. Like they're missing a lot of stress,
right?
But they're also missing a lot about themselves due to not having this fatherhood experience.
Yes.
And that's not a negative thing towards them.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's just like when you're in this space and you're active, you just learn a different piece of yourself, man. It's like opening up another dimension.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about, I'm transparent because I want people to learn. So I remember my youngest son used to play AAU basketball, and it used to be some of the worst experiences I ever had because literally after the game, he'd be mad. He didn't play well. I'm yelling and whatever. And then I remember I read a book or something like that, and it says, remove yourself from the experience and think about him being a player. And not only is he trying to figure the game out, but he's trying to listen to you and figure the game out. And then I had a revelation. Shout out to Mr. Gibbs, man. Mr. Gibbs, his son used to play at my oldest son's high school. And Mr. Gibbs was the quietest guy, quietest dad I ever saw. But his son played with a level of peace, Brandon. Like he was hooping. He was going through the play. He's a killer. Certified, just could hoop. But his son played with a level of peace. And I remember I asked Mr. Gibbs one time, I said, man, what is it? He said, if I'm peaceful, he's peaceful. Wow. He said, if I'm rowdy, he rowdy. What that did is that I loved the game, but I reduced my personal interaction. And it took me a while. And whether or not he made a good play, a bad play, if the coaches discipline him or not, I shut up. Because he's got to work through that circumstance himself. And I've talked to so many kids and they're like, man, I'm just trying to play the game, but my daddy's out there yelling at the ref and he yelling at me. And I'm like, I'm still trying to navigate. And I'm using that example with sports, with life. We got to let them try to navigate. We're there along the way, but you can't coach them all through the game. You got to give them the time. You got to take a timeout, give them the play and let them run it. Sometimes it goes well. Sometimes it doesn't. And I know you know that playing football, the coach in the middle of the game, it's like, Brandon, when you was a running back and the coach said, all right, Brandon, I see you. Now cut right. You're like, bro, this is instinct. I just got to figure out how to cut. You can't tell me to cut right. So kids, and that's, but particularly, I've said this on other shows, and I want you to continue, but we focus on sports so much, and I often said it's a detriment that we focus on sports so much because we're focusing on something that it might have a good temporary impact, but sometimes these kids, they shouldn't be in a sports program. They should be in apprenticeship programs. They should be learning about business on a Saturday 5 or 6 times. And I love the game of basketball, but I'm results driven. What if we cut it in half and they were in a business class learning about investing, or they were in a mental health? You know what I'm saying? So it's just, but we don't have a lot that we built. So that's one of the things that we focus on is that we always push sports, and it's a great medium, but there has to be a heavy balance. Because I know, Brandon, you know this, I know Black fathers that are trying to live through their kids. And in the moment the kid graduate high school, the father is like, I don't even know what to do with myself. Yeah,
there's no
connection. He didn't go pro. He's not going to college. And now what do I do? Well, it's because we haven't invested in trying to help this person become a healthy individual. We put more energy in trying to make sure you got the behind the back, step back jumper, as opposed to helping you navigate and become a professional, become a good father, provider, and all that stuff. So that's my rant. Man. Sorry.
No, it's a good rant. No, you're right. You know, even for myself, you know, pushing sport, like I talked about my daughter, my oldest, she hates track. She does not like it. Like she really does. And I asked her, I said, do you want to do like robotics instead? And she just glue up like, yeah, I'd rather do that. And I was like, I get it, but you got to learn how to lose. Like she doesn't know how to lose, man. Like she can't, like we could play Connect 4 as a family and she'll get beat by anybody and just like, she just starts crying and mad and stumps off. And I'm just like, it's Connect 4. Like nothing's bad going to happen, but she don't know how to lose. So, you know, part of it's just like life lessons, but part of it's like, should I be pushing her for this, you know, for sports when this ain't really her jam? Like, you know, so I get it. I think sports is easy too for Black folks because that's where we see ourselves visually on fields and on courts. We don't see ourselves, you know, in spelling bee tournaments and stuff like that. But we should venture into those spaces because we'll probably be just as good and dominant as we are in a lot of sports in those avenues as well. But we just don't channel those things.
Right.
And there's there's other barriers too. Like sometimes that stuff's expensive. You know, one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of black kids playing baseball because the equipment is expensive.
And basketball is dirt cheap. And I'm very aware basketball is dirt cheap. You just get a ball and we can go hoop somewhere.
Yes, right. You can get a crate. You can get a crate. Right. But again, but what do we do though? We will invest if we find it worth it. We will invest in it. So I don't think that that's an excuse for us because it's expensive.
Absolutely.
Because AAU ain't cheap. AAU
it ain't cheap. Money. Shoot, no, it costs a lot of money, dang.
So we'll definitely do that. Yeah. But again, we have to like you said, we have to be intentional about investing in our babies and just see what their interests are and give them options and opportunities. You know, I've had my girls in taekwondo, gymnastics. We trying out this track thing. Like we just trying to do whatever just to see what sticks and have you socialize and connect on something. And I think that's what we have to do. We can't just expect our kids are going to play football, basketball, and volleyball and all these other sports all the time.
That's not the world. You look at the world. That's not the world. And we're moving. And as you know, I think that's the thing about being intentional. Kids have to learn, and specifically as Black fathers, we have to be aware of what the world is going to start looking like. So we have to see down the road. Everything's becoming more automated. You better have some sort of IT skills. You better be in sales or something of that nature. You need to know where things are going. And that's how you get an advantage is when you kind of have a vision. And sometimes we just had so much short-term vision and it sounds good, but you know, the days to where your dad and my dad could work at the plant for 40 years and get a pension and put all his kids through college, that's gone. So, and also I do want to talk, if you mind shifting a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
No, but I know that you said in the beginning about only being looked at as basically as economic vehicles. Mm-hmm. What I find interesting about that is that in this part of the world, we're the poorest men.
Yes.
Now I want everybody to think about that statement. Yep. We are the poorest, but the expectation is for us to provide. And I understand that. I get that. But I want everybody, economics is so important in our communities. And I think as men, we have to do more. We do need to work more. We do need to get our skills up. We do need to get all these things because, you know, being a Black father is not just you being responsible for the children. If you're married or you have a partner, it's being responsible for that partner, it's being responsible for the other people that are involved in your community, in your area as well. And we have to take economics more personally. And I do think that we have to be intentional about making sure that your money is right. Because let's be honest, I don't care. This is a Kevin Samuels talk, but I don't care what woman you are on the planet. When the money ain't right, Black dad, the house ain't right. Period. Exactly. Been there, done that. Brandon and I might be different ages, but he knows that every relationship you might have, if the money gets funny, other things get funny there too. And we have to be aware of that because our partners are looking for stability. They're not looking for excuses. They're looking for stability. And as Black fathers, we have to be intentional about raising our resources and making sure that we're providing a consistent environment. That doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen, but I always call it the LeBron. To me, Black fathers, I said this today, Black fathers, you are LeBron James. When things go well, you get all the credit in the world. And when things go bad, your lady and your kids are looking at you like Skip Bayless.
Yeah, exactly.
They skipping you all day. And guess what? That comes with the territory. And guess what? You might not get any of the credit, but it doesn't matter. That's the other part. You might not get any credit.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, the person that should be giving you the credit is yourself, knowing that you provided the stability, man. Like that's the reward, is that you created the foundation for this thing to be what it is. It's like men who build bridges. Like they ain't had a name on the bridge, but they know they tell their family, remember, I was a part of the person who put that into the city, and it was a dangerous job, but that's the reason why we can travel in this interstate back and forth or whatever. Like that's the type of stuff that we have to be comfortable enough with to make happen.
That's a great point, Brandon.
And it's like just understanding that like you did it, like you made it happen. That's the reward in itself. It's not about getting the Father's Day card and the pat on the back and the sexual favors from your lover or whatever. Those things are great too, but it's really about just understanding that you made it happen and that you provided an opportunity for your young person to grow, thrive, and move forward. And those rewards and stuff will come to you later. Like I said, one of the things that I've been blessed with is that my daughters are pretty socially intelligent. Like they talk very well, they understand things very well. And they give me this feedback where I'm just like, dang, maybe, it makes me think about myself. Like, I guess you're right. Like I had to consider that they do have points and they do have perspectives, even knowing they're 8 and 5 years old. Like their viewpoint matters, and it matters because I've created space for it to matter.
Yes. So also, man, and this is something that I've worked through personally, but fathers and wanting their ego stroked a little bit.
Yeah.
And I've heard some people say that's not necessary. I've heard some people say, look, as a father, you shouldn't be appreciated. The one thing I do know is this, Brandon. I want your opinion. Every human being on the planet wants to be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Every single one. They want to be affirmed in some way. And I think I've talked to a lot of Black dads, and many of us, myself included, at some points in our life, we didn't just feel it. You're not even looking for a grand party. Sometimes you're just looking for honey, you did a good job. Or even the kids like, man, Dad, I appreciate you. Now, the blessing that I had was that with my children is that, man, they say it in different ways. So my son in college, shout out to Chris, would text me and say, hey, I got a game tonight, such and such. I know you're going to be watching. And I'm like, yeah, I'm watching. So it's not about the performance. It's just that I'm available. But that's his way of saying, Dad, I appreciate you.
Right.
Or even my youngest son saying, hey, Dad, what time are you going to be home? I'm like, man, what you want, some food? Like, but he's like, hey, I just want to know what time. And I realized after communication, hey, I miss you. I haven't seen you. And so we got to get our egos in check to understand that sometimes that's how our children communicate. But my question for you, Brandon, is talking to the ladies that are married or that have partners, affirmation for a Black father. How important is that?
It's very important. And I think that, so to me, it goes psychological. I'm not gonna get too deep because we got that much time. But every human being, this is one of my theories, we seek three things. We seek security, we seek significance, and we seek belonging. It's what I call the universal goal. So as a Black man and as a Black father, what we want from our woman is those three things to let us know that we're doing the right thing, right? So when it comes to security, it's not about Black women or whoever our partners are. Women are making sure that we're safe.
In general. Yeah.
Right. It's about women making sure that we're comfortable. So are you offering things of comfort for that man just because he's the father and he's doing what he needs to do? Whatever that man's comfort thing may be. This is the old adage. It might be a cooked meal. It could just be some
meal, I like a meal, Brandon. I like a meal, bro.
It could be, hey, let me fix you a drink, or let me pat you on the back, let me give you a back rub, let me check in on you, let me give you a text message. It could be whatever that man feels comfortable with. That is just saying, I see you, right? And I value you as a father to this family. The significance piece is just let that ways that that you matter. Like so for example, my wife's gonna kill me when she sees this. One thing, there's this line in this movie.
She's pregnant, bro. Come on now. I don't want you got to go upstairs, not me. So
so there's this thing. My wife and her best friend, they made this joke about me from this movie. My wife told me the joke, and now she says it to like affirm that I'm doing a good job. She says, he's a good man, Savannah. I don't remember what movie that's from, but it's like, he's a good man, Savannah. So every so often, my wife would just say, you're a good man, Savannah. And it's just letting me know, like, I appreciate what you're doing. And to me, it started off as like some stupid little thing that her and her friend was saying. But I actually appreciate it when I hear it. It's like, damn, okay, thank you for letting me know. Like, I'm handling business. I'm getting things done. She's just like, you're a good man, Savannah. So it's like a little inside joke between, I guess me, her, and her friend at this point.
Right.
But it lets me know that I'm significant. What I'm doing matters, and she sees me, she appreciates me. And then the third thing is belonging, which is extremely important. Is that like my presence is very important to my family. Yes. Like when I'm like right now it's bath time, so they don't really need me. But trust and believe, they know when daddy's done with his call. Like, where you at, bro? Like, what we about to do? We gonna sit on this couch? You about to make us some popcorn? We about to chill? Like, what are we doing? And they'll ask me like, Dad, are you coming to this? Are you doing this? Because they just want my presence. And then sometimes when I'm not around enough and they need me, they start doing all three of them have a little thing that they do. My youngest daughter, she'll just come and interrupt the Zoom call. She don't give a damn who I'm talking to.
Right. Hey, I need your attention, bro. Right.
Come and stand right here, be all up in the camera, just like, you done? My oldest daughter, she's a planner. So she's like, Dad, what you doing on Friday? Or what you doing later today? Like, so she'll give me these signals like, I want some time with you. Let me know when it is. And my wife's just like, you're doing too much. She just comes like, you're just doing too much. That's her way of saying you need to stop doing everything for everybody and do some time and have some time with me or have some time with us. So, that belonging piece, that presence piece is important. So I think when it comes to the ladies, finding the way that whatever way you communicate with your partner, finding out how to do that is important.
Right. And knowing that it does matter. Because even if the guy doesn't say it matters, in his mind, it does. Last thing, Black men, the importance of Black fathers having other fathers or other men to communicate with. How important is that?
It's so important, man. That's one of the reasons why I appreciate us, me and you. Our dynamic is that we can talk about fatherhood from several different levels and be connected. As I stated earlier, my two best friends, they don't have kids. So when I talk to them, we talk about business or sports or, what Dr. Umar Johnson's doing crazy, whatever. We just talk about whatever. We don't talk about fatherhood because it's such a one-way conversation. So I think having other Black men who are going through it or who share things about fatherhood is helpful. I mean, I have men that I know who are dads, but a lot of them are way older than me, and their kids are like damn near my age. So it's
a little different dynamic.
Yeah, it's a little different. So, but I do think that it's extremely important to do that. I think a lot of times though, people seek counsel in me as far as how to deal with their children, just due to the nature of what I do per professional. But yeah, I think it's very important to have a nice cohort or collective of other fathers that you can bounce ideas off of and get support.
Yeah, I think one of the things that helped me was that once I started to get transparent with some of the other fathers I know, what I realized is that many of us had similar circumstances and are dealing with different things. So it's not only not foreign, but you're comfortable enough to also bounce solutions off of each other. So I had a Black father say, hey, man, you might want to try this with your son, or you guys might want to try communicating this way. And not good or bad, but just different forms of being effective with each other. And hey, man, my wife was tripping about this, and I don't know, just having other constructive men, and the key word is constructive, that are going to give you constructive ideas about having a healthy relationship is extremely important. And I do think that as fathers, we don't do that enough. We'll talk about how much money Nick Cannon got, but we won't be open. But let's be real, we won't be open to our other brother that's doing well financially in life and say, hey man, I'm struggling right now. I see you've done some good things with money. Can you help me? And the other father has to make himself available for you too. And that is missing, Brandon, is the level of vulnerability to where we can get on team being I hate the word unity, but being transparent enough to be able to trust somebody. I'm not judging you. You know what I'm saying? And we've had money conversations because I know that you want the best for me as a Black father, and then vice versa. But we need to be doing that a little bit more, because based upon our results, I don't think we're having enough of those conversations, man.
We're not, and we do need to push it too. And I think even for myself, I took a kind of a pause on what kind of content to create, what kind of messages I want to share. And honestly, I think I'm gonna just start pushing the straight Black male fatherhood stuff and how I'm gonna tie that into leadership and healing, because it's so needed, man. Like, the bar is so low as far as the expectation of what Black men are supposed to be as fathers. Absolutely. That at some point we have to raise that bar for ourselves, because at this point, man, I'm starting to see the narrative go away from us when people talk about family, they're not even black family. They're not even considering black men in the picture, and that's sad because without us, there is no black family. There isn't. You have to have us a part of the equation.
Yeah, we got to be intentional about that. And the thing is that can be sad, but as Kevin says, you have the ability to change your narrative right then, right there. And what we're trying to do is to do that right now. So, if you guys found this show constructive, share it with a friend, share it with your mama, share it with your brother, share it with your cousin, your uncle, little Rico, Ray, and all of them, to smash that like button. But no, this was a great conversation, and hopefully we provided some constructive information, not only for Black fathers out there, but also for women to communicate with their partners as well.
Absolutely. There you have it, folks. So we're going to wrap up this episode of the Jegna and The Thinker. We will be back in 2 weeks with more constructive conversation about Black men, what we need to do, what we don't need to do, and how we push forward. As long as it's constructive, we'll keep bringing the heat. We'll see you next time. Peace.